It has been called the Summer of Hate. In a 3-month period in 1999, the country suffered a series of hate crime killings whose victims were chosen because of their religion, race, or sexual orientation. In California, Indiana, and Illinois, 5 were killed and over a dozen injured by avowed white supremacists. But the Summer of Hate would begin here in Northern California. In the early hours of a June morning, the California Capitol would awake to a violent act born of fire. On this night, 3 Sacramento area synagogues were firebombed within a 45-minute period. It was the worst series of anti-Semitic attacks in Sacramento history. Fire inspectors at the scene quickly called in the FBI to conduct a hate crimes investigation. The hardest hit was B'nai Israel, the oldest congregation west of the Mississippi, which had just marked its 150th anniversary. Although the sanctuary was damaged, the Torahs were saved. But the library was engulfed in flames, and thousands of books collected here by generations of Jewish worshipers were suddenly turned to ashes.
There were books in there which illustrated our history with nameplates in the books that had been donated to honor people's parents. And that's what hurts.
And what's interesting is that they hit the Learning Center. How anybody expects that's going to affect the temple or learning is beyond me, but all this does is give the Jewish people more courage.
Rabbi Brad Bloom presides over this congregation of over 2,000.
When I stood here in the wee hours of Friday morning, smelling the aftermath of this fire, and that is the hardest thing for me, is to say that I'm not accepted because I'm a Jew.
And to my horror, I saw the fire.
When Vice Mayor Jimmy Yee saw the burnt facade of B'nai Israel, it brought back horrible memories. Yee was on his way to City Hall that morning when he came upon the first flames of the Summer of Hate.
Being that it's in my district, I decided to pull over just to find out what was going on. That burned out library brought back flashback to the time my own home was firebombed.
A few years earlier, Asian, African American, and Jewish community groups had been the targets of hate-related arsons. Jimmy Yee was attacked at his home. An incendiary device was thrown through the front window of his house.
Okay.
Paul Sieve is the Special Assistant Attorney General for the state of California.
Hate crime has been a problem here in Sacramento for a number of years. I mean, this was not the first incident of hate crime. In 1992, there were a series of arsons and firebombings.
And at that time, we banded together in support of each other. The fact that the Jewish synagogue was attacked again just brought us back together again.
Sacramento citizens and leaders had learned from past violence and decided to act quickly. Before the ashes had settled, Jimmy Yee and members of the Asian American community came together with a plan of support.
We met all day long, worked all around the clock. We had heard what had happened in Billings, and we thought that was a grand idea to get the community to come together. And shortly after coordinating with the Jewish community, we came up with using the word Chai, which means life.
Just 2 days after the arsons, the Sacramento Bee printed a full-page symbol for people to hang in their windows.
My wife and I immediately looked through the paper, found that, and put it up right away to let them know how we feel about this kind of event.
This was grassroots organizers who came together and decided what to do. That here's an old-fashioned medium, a print newspaper, that can disseminate in one morning a message that now can not only be read, but can be placed in people's storefronts and automobiles and homes in a way that really made you feel the power of people acting and taking that sort of affirmative step.
The fact that Sacramento is willing to do these things and that the city government is behind these things gives us support. Now the signs in people's windows that say Chai. Chai means not just life, but determination to prevail.
Signs of support continued to appear throughout the weekend. For Paul Seave, his experience with this hate crime was also personal. He's a member of the B'nai Israel congregation.
The support of the community is really what made the response so palpable and so reassuring, and made you feel that you weren't being marginalized, that you were a part of the Sacramento community.
Just 3 days after the attacks, the curtain rose on a stage filled with rabbis, priests, imams, and other religious and public leaders welcoming the 4,000 residents attending a unity rally at the community center.
It's very dramatic when you see that kind of crowd come up on such short notice. It's just very important to have the community step forward and say, hey, we're behind you. If they don't do those things, you just don't have that same drive to continue to fight this hatred.
The response of citizens here would continue for years to come. But everyone will remember that one weekend when the people of Sacramento surrounded their Jewish neighbors and gave them the determination to prevail.
What I'm hoping is that the momentum will not be lost and that we will not go back to the way we were.
Sacramento citizens were seeking ways to rebuild, but the arsonists were still at large. Up Highway 5, about 160 miles, the summer of hate was about to turn deadly. The people of Redding in Shasta County, California were looking forward to 4th of July. Before the weekend was over, this rural community of 80,000 would be shocked by violent attacks against two of their own. They lived and worked on a little plot of paradise where they owned a local nursery. They helped found the farmers market, the Redding Arboretum, and a children's science learning center. They were pillars of the community, loved by their neighbors and family. But one night in early July 1999, hate and violence would come to their door. Gary Mattson and Winfield Mauder were found shot to death in the home they had shared for many years. 6 days later, two brothers who knew Winfield Mauder and Gary Mattson from the farmers market were arrested in connection with their killings. 31-year-old Benjamin Matthew Williams and 29-year-old James Tyler Williams were later charged with the hate crime slayings of Mattson and Mauder. When the Williams brothers' house was searched, police discovered a cache of weapons and extensive white supremacist literature, including tracts from the World Church of the Creator. This same group was connected to the other summer of hate killings in the Midwest. Upon further investigation, the FBI determined that the Williams brothers were also responsible for the firebombing of the 3 Sacramento synagogues. But another chilling discovery made by detectives was a list of 32 people connected to the burned synagogues, including Rabbi Brad Bloom. Though law enforcement had solved the crime, the families and community were left to deal with their loss. Ryan Mattson remembers when he first learned that his brother Gary was gay.
I don't think I feared so much for his safety as his emotional well-being. I certainly knew he was going to be in for difficult times. I didn't really think at the time that it would be an unsafe time.
Oscar Mattson raised his sons here in Shasta County, California. As the Mattson family took root here and grew, Oscar welcomed all of them, including Gary's wife Marcia and daughter Clea, and later, Gary's new life partner, Winfield Mauter.
First there was Marcia, then there was Clea, and then there was Winfield, and they always were a part of the family, no question about it.
Well, our family is incredible. We have Clea, our daughter, who is the daughter also of Gary and Winfield. I myself was married to Gary, but I'm still very much a great part of the family, and we all have kind of felt it's one of our proudest accomplishments.
And he was my dad, and I had so much to learn from him, and I just kind of realized that going to college, you know, I started learning all this stuff, and I would like tell him. He was all excited, and I was like, oh, I could learn a lot from him. He has so much to tell me, and that's what hurts me the most, is that I won't ever get to learn all that stuff.
Maybe if they'd been different people, Gary and Winfield, it would have had less of an impact, but they were outstanding citizens. They weren't outstanding gay citizens, although they were gay, but they were outstanding citizens.
Having lost two prominent community members to hate, the people of Redding gathered to honor Mattson and Mauter. Shasta County District Attorney McGregor Scott commended the crowd for taking this very public stand.
I want to tell you that the country is watching us right now, and I think it's very important at this particular point in time that we come forward, we stand up, and we be counted for who we are here in Shasta County.
Those of us who bear the name of Christ also bear a special responsibility for the rights and safety of the homosexual sisters and brothers in our community.
My name is Betty Lou Vollendroff. I'm the mother of a gay son, and I thank all of you for being here today.
Well, I wish now that I had told people about my family, because all my friends in school were always very religious. It's just a really religious community. There's a lot of churches, and now I wish that I had just told them, because I think that they were my friends and they respected me, and if I had told them about my family and had them get to know them, they would have been taught something.
It has been 5 years since the summer of hate slayings of Gary Mattson and Winfield Mauter in Redding and the anti-Semitic arsons in Sacramento. The Sacramento synagogues were rebuilt. Civic leaders are establishing a unity center, and a brand new library stocked with books and materials donated from around the world opened last year. The Williams brothers were convicted of the synagogue arsons. On November 17, 2002, while awaiting trial for the double homicides, Benjamin Matthew Williams committed suicide. His brother James Tyler Williams was found guilty of the hate killings and is serving 50 years to life. Though these acts of hate connected the members of the torched synagogues to the family of the murdered men in Redding, this relationship had not been formally recognized. Until B'nai Israel congregation member Paul Sieve made a surprising discovery. Nancy Mattson, his deputy assistant, is married to Gary Mattson's brother, Brian.
I would hear from Nancy about the impact it was having on the families, and it really disturbed me. Our temple has never done anything to acknowledge what happened up there in Redding. There's obviously a huge connection here, and now that I'm beginning to understand what happens to families, of people who are victims of violent crime. I thought, and just knowing Nancy and knowing her husband, we should do something.
Good evening and Shabbat Shalom. We are pleased to welcome so many on this unique Sabbath when we will perform what we believe to be an act of repairing the world. When we reflect on the lives of Gary Mattson and Winfield Mauter.
Historically, these are two groups of people who have suffered grievously.
This is a place where they worship with their children, and to have that attacked for no reason, that's a loss of security for everyone.
What you ultimately want to do is to create a consensus around you that the community says it's intolerable to do that. Because if you don't have community, then the people who commit those crimes, when they hear the silence, it is a nod, a wink, to say, do it again.
Gary and Winfield openly declared their sexual orientation, choosing the desert of ostracism over the bondage of self-denial. And I really appreciate Rabbi Bloom's efforts in this. And the fact that he's willing to reach out toward gays and lesbians and toward the issue of intolerance. Gary would certainly appreciate that very much.
I'd like to say a few words about Gary and Winfield, who are wonderful people. I don't like it that my memory of them is wrapped up in anger and sorrow, so much sorrow. Here I go. But this has been a healing experience. I hope it brought them some peace as well.
We're reaching out to this family. We're really doing what God wanted us to do as a holy community. I'm very proud to be a Jew and to be a rabbi in this congregation today. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos to everyone.
You can connect with local resources, hear more stories from Northern California communities and leaders, and share your own ideas on fighting intolerance at kqed.org/notinourtown. Major funding for this program has been provided by Ambassador James C. Hormel and Timothy C. Wu. Additional support has been provided by the Evelyn and Walter Haas Jr. Fund, Columbia Foundation, R. Gwyn Follis Foundation, Glenn Perry and Eric Knudsen, Jennifer Essex and Steve Marcus, winners of the 2004 Robert and Carol McNeil KQED Volunteer of the Year Award, the KQED Campaign for the Future Program Venture Fund, and from the following. This program is a co-production between KQED and The Working Group.